and welcome back to the BizBlend podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and BizBlend is the space where bold business meets brave conversations. Now, today in this episode, we are diving deep into something that most people don't want to talk about, but it's impacting everything: your health, your productivity, your relationships, and even the way you lead. Our guest today is someone who lives at the intersection of science, healing, and transformation. Listeners, meet Dr. Debi Silber. She is the founder of the PBT, Post Betrayal Transformation Institute, and National Forgiveness. She is a two-time TEDx speaker, award-winning author, and host of the top-rated podcast, From Betrayal to Breakthrough. And she's also a holistic psychologist who helps people heal from something very real: post betrayal syndrome. And here's what struck me the most about Debbie. She's not just helping people survive betrayal, but she's showing us how to transform because of it. So it's kind of, making the weakness our strength. So whether you are a founder, you are a team leader, just someone trying to navigate your next chapter, this conversation is definitely going to hit home. So let's quickly get into this. So Dr. Debbie, welcome to the show, and it is an absolute honor having you with us.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to our conversation.
Okay, so I guess most of our listeners, of course, when I was going through the introducing you to all of them, they will have this question in their mind: what exactly is post betrayal syndrome, and how do we know if we are experiencing it?
Yeah, that was one of the three discoveries made during my PhD study. And, it's just to back up, it was my own betrayals that led me into this program. There was usually I learn my way through things when I have a question or a challenge, but there wasn't a book, a course, and anything. So I was in deep trouble. I needed to heal so I could be there for my clients, my kids. I had 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. So I enrolled in this program, and while I was there, I did a study. I studied betrayal. And that study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life. But to answer your question, post-betrayal syndrome was the second of the discoveries. And what we learned was there's this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. We've had over 100,000 people take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. And I'm happy to share some of the symptoms if you want to hear them.
Please, please.
Yeah. Okay, because you'll see if you're struggling, so often we think, "Oh, it's just stress. Oh, it's just aging." No, it's not. Very likely it's an unhealed betrayal. So now imagine out of over 100,000 people, men, women, just about every country's represented. So out of them, 78% constantly revisit their experience, 81% feel a loss of personal power, 94% deal with painful triggers. These are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy, 68% have sleep issues, 40%, 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, you can't even hold food down. Later on, you may be emotionally eating. 45% have a digestive issue. And that could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, you name it. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed, 62% can't concentrate. And I'll keep going in a minute, but just imagine you can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, you still have to work. You still have to raise your kids. That's not even emotionally. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness, 83% are very angry, 79% are stressed, just a few more. 84% have an inability to trust. I mean, just think of what that would do in your business, and I'm happy to dive into that even more. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. So if you're keeping people at a distance, how's that impacting your work and your relationships? 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how. Staggering, right?
Was staggering,
Yeah.
super staggering.
Yeah.
And that is really really I'd be very I won't be feeling uncomfortable to use the word scary actually.
You know what's even scary about it? These aren't these numbers aren't even from a recent betrayal. This could be from your parent who did something awful when you were a kid. This could be from the partner who broke your heart in high school. So think about this. That person may not know, care, remember, they may not even be alive. And here we are decades later with these symptoms because of what was left unhealed. The good news is you can heal from all of it. That was the third discovery.
Hmm. Okay. So I guess the numbers are more than enough to emphasize upon the seriousness
Mhm,
of
mhm.
the detrimental effects of betrayal or the post betrayal syndrome.
Yeah.
But, generally speaking, and, personally also, because I have also been betrayed multiple times, personally,
Mhm,
professionally. And most of us think that was years ago and I've really moved on.
mhm.
But then the numbers you mentioned, they don't, uh, you know, show this picture. I mean, the after effects are
Yeah.
huge.
Mhm.
So, what are some subtle ways people kind of self sabotage without realizing it is tied to an unhealed betrayal?
Yeah. So first of all, multiple betrayals mean you're stuck in the most common place we get stuck, stage 3 out of the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough. That was the third discovery. Happy to talk about that because that's the most common place people land, and that's where repeat betrayals happen. That's where they have the most symptoms. That's where they get the most stuck. So I could talk about that. But to answer your question, um, we see it in work and health and relationships. Here's how you can spot an unhealed betrayal. In relationships, we'll see it in one of two ways. A repeat experience, like you shared, right? The face has changed, but it's the same thing. Most common sign of an unhealed betrayal. We can also see it where the big wall goes up. Been there, done that. No one's getting near me again. And we think that's coming from a place of strength. It's not. It's coming from fear. We're so hurt that we don't want to risk that level of vulnerability, in opening up our heart again. We see it in health. People go to the most well meaning coaches, doctors, healers, therapists to manage a stress related symptom, illness, condition, disease. And at the root of it is that unhealed betrayal. We see it at work too. You want that razor promotion, you deserve it, but you don't have the confidence to ask. Or you want to be a team player, collaborative partner, but the person you trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How do you trust that boss, that coworker, that partner? It's everywhere.
Mm. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes really, really great sense.
Mhm.
And yeah, I, I think our listeners and all of us would love to know about your third discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. This was the most, for me personally, was the most exciting. And what we learned was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and most people do, if we're going to fully heal, we will move through 5 now proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we now know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at each of those stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. And I'm happy to share the stages if you wanna hear them.
Yeah, please go on,
Okay.
Dr. Debbie.
So stage 1 is before it happens, and if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody, me too, was a heavy lean on the physical and the mental thinking and doing. Think about it, we're so good at that, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual. Well, if a table only has 2 legs, it's gonna be easy for that table to topple over, right? That's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma D-Day, discovery day. This is the scariest out of all of the stages. And this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. So, right here, we've gotten the news that just shatters our mind, our heart, and we've ignited the stress response. So now we're headed for every single stress related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Our mind is in such a state of chaos. We just can't understand what we just learned. This makes no sense. And our worldview has just been shattered. That's our mental model, the rules that govern us that prevent chaos. Don't go here, trust this person. And in one earth shattering moment or series of moments, every rule that we've been holding is no longer true. The bottom has bottomed out and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. This is terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You grab hold of anything or anyone. in order to, right, to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. This is the most practical out of all of the stages. Um, if you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Who can I trust? Here's the trap though. Stage 3, like I mentioned before, this is the stage we get stuck in, and here's why. Once we've figured out how to survive this traumatic experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma we just came from, we think it's good. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5, right? Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know that, we plant roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things start to happen. The first thing is we start getting all those small self benefits. We get our story. We love our story. We get to be right. We get sympathy from everyone we tell our story to. And because we're feeling so miserable, that kind of feels good, right? So we plant deeper roots. And now, because we're here longer than we should be, now the mind starts doing things like, maybe I'm not that great. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. And we plant deeper roots. And now, because we're here longer than we should be again, these are the thoughts we're thinking. So this is the energy we start putting out. And like energy attracts like energy. So now we start attracting more experiences like that because that's what we feel, right? Here's where we go to therapy. And if this well-meaning therapist isn't highly skilled in betrayal, we'll feel heard, validated, understood. We're not an inch closer to stage 4. We're actually solidifying our spot in stage 3. Here's where we may join some kind of support group, and we will actually sabotage our healing because you found your people, right? Here's where we may be healing, but we sabotage our healing because we're afraid to outgrow our betrayer who has no intention of changing. You see? It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go, right here we start numbing. So we start using food, drugs, alcohol, anything to make the day easier to get through. So here's the thing, you do it for a day, a week, a month, now it's a habit, a year, 10 years. I could see someone 10 years later and say, that emotional eating you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they look at me like I'm crazy. They'd say, it happened 10 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's why people stay here so often. And now here we are medicating, suppressing the symptoms of post betrayal syndrome, navigating more betrayals coming our way. And, we're just in a very stuck, sad space. Can I get you into stage 4?
Yeah, and before we get into the next stage, so I have two questions, or
Yeah, sure.
rather one question from first of all, it is so astonishing and exciting to see how science is kind of intersecting a meeting with the emotions and soul.
Hmm.
Um, because often, that skeptical mind of us, we don't want to quantify anything, when we talk about emotions.
Hmm.
Um, so first of all, it's so exciting and so astonishing. And secondly, um, when we talk about stage 3, the survival mode,
Hmm.
um, many people, as I mentioned initially, that they kind of make believe, or they kind of, rewire their mind to or heart to believe that yes, they're fine,
Hmm.
because they could be consciously or subconsciously, they feel that if I keep on myself, just roaming around, just stuck in this vicious loop of not able to move on from this betrayal, then it's going to hamper me. Especially in high performance environments, this happen in business settings.
Hmm.
So why do you think people tend to skip that healing part and just pain or go straight to the I am fine mode?
Yeah, they're trying to outrun it. And what's so interesting is that especially for high performers, especially for people in business, whether it's your own business, you're working, within a company, whatever it is. This is doing so much damage to your creativity, your productivity, your energy, your engagement, all of it. I mean, if you want to be a high-powered leader or performer, this is one of the biggest energy drains holding you back. So, when you look at it, like, especially and I do a lot of speaking, and when I speak with entrepreneurs or I speak with just business owners or business leaders, this is one of the biggest reasons why they need to heal, because just trying to outrun it doesn't work. I did the study, I have the proof. You cannot count on time. You can't even count on a new relationship to heal it. It will follow you around until and unless you intentionally and deliberately heal it. And the people who are stuck in stage 3 are putting in so much extra effort to make up for the intense energy drains and lack of ability to focus and all of that, where if they just healed, they would be performing at such a higher level.
Mm, mm, makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. And now, Dr. Debbie, please tell us about the stage 4.
Yeah, sure. So, if you're willing to let go of the story, grieve, mourn the loss, a bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So, here's where you acknowledge I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Right there in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. So, you're not healing just yet, but at least you stopped the massive damage that was happening in stage 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, apartment, whatever. Your stuff's not there, it's not quite cozy yet, but it's this sort of hopeful excitement. And what's so interesting is what I noticed, there's this one spot as people move from stage 3 to stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you. You don't take the thing when you're moving, you don't take the things with you that don't represent this new version of you you're ready to become. Same thing here. If your friends weren't there for you, you've left them behind. That support group that's keeping you stuck, you're done. That therapist that doesn't understand betrayal, you're done. That betrayer who's not changing, you're done. And it can feel very unfamiliar, because all of a sudden, we can feel alone. And it's if those people don't rise, they just don't come along. When we've settled into this space, we've made it cozy, we've made it kind of mentally home. We move into the 5th most beautiful stage, and this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. We couldn't do that earlier. We didn't have the bandwidth. Now we can. We're making all kinds of new rules, new boundaries, based on our experience. And we have a new worldview based on everything we see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of that table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Wow, wow. And if I may ask, Dr. Debbie, what was the research like? I mean, how much time did it take? Because I think such a beautiful study and insights out of this with really heartbreaking and staggering numbers. It must have taken a lot of time and analysis and people, because we are kind of the most complicated beings out there. So what was it like for
Yeah.
you?
Well, first of all, for me, to go back for a PhD at 50, that was that was hard. I hadn't been in school in 30 years, so that was hard on its own. The study was hundreds and hundreds of hours, because we we were there were the 3 discoveries, and the more I was digging, the more we found. And it was so exciting. I just didn't wanna stop, and I remember a moment doing the study, and I just said, "I have no idea how I'm gonna heal from this, but if I do, I'm taking everybody with me." Like, it was just a knowing. So all that work, has definitely paid off.
Definitely, definitely. That is really, really inspiring. And it also gives me hope that even if I age, I definitely have so many options to look out for my
Mhm.
personal achievement. So that is really, really empowering and inspiring, Dr. Debbie. PhD 50. Wow.
The whole idea is, things come our way. That's going to happen. What we do with that makes or breaks all the difference. I mean, so many people, they have their story and they're sticking with it. And I looked at it saying, okay, I can either be the poster child for betrayal, but that's kind of a bad story. But if instead I can do something powerful with that, that story's going to be so much better. I mean, the story now, all these books later and the TEDx talks and National Forgiveness Day and our certification programs and launching PBT in other countries. I mean, it's so exciting, and it was really only it was just a choice. That's it. The thought of staying stuck just didn't resonate at all. So,
Mm. Okay. Now, since we are talking uh, about post betrayal syndrome and betrayal in the business context, so
mhm,
uh, definitely betrayal shows up in the workplace. I have, kind of suffered an indirect betrayal, uh, you know, by the leadership,
mhm,
which I kind of, kept within myself.
mhm,
And it happens with, many of, people out there in the workplace setting, especially
mhm.
leaders or entrepreneurs. Very common among partners, co-founders, and, people at the top positions as well. So how can, how is it possible to rebuild that trust?
Yeah.
Or what exactly is the next step, if there's a betrayal, without staying stuck in that hypervigilance or kind of exhibiting, in the body language or something like that.
Yeah. I don't believe trust can be repaired. It can be rebuilt, though. And the way I look at this is um, I look at trust like a brick wall. And the only way I know of a brick wall being built is brick by brick by brick. Every opportunity someone has to show that they're trustworthy, that's one brick in that brick wall. And that's why trust takes a long time to build. And then think about it. In one moment, the person who built that brick wall just takes the whole thing down, right? And now you could look at the rubble of bricks and say, I don't have the least bit of interest in watching that thing get rebuilt. And that's okay. You can walk away. However, should you choose to be willing to watch the brick wall be rebuilt, the person who shattered it has to be a really good bricklayer. And it goes up the same way it went up the first time, brick by brick by brick. But here's what I see the brick wall up. A person shatters the brick wall. They don't really have much of an interest in what in rebuilding it. So the person whose trust was shattered says, "Fine, I'll rebuild it." No, that's not their role. That's why they feel hypervigilant because they've taken on the role and the job of rebuilding trust that they didn't shatter. It's not for them to do. If the person is unwilling to do that work to rebuild that trust, you have very little to work with. Does that make sense?
Mm. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
they're not taking any responsibility if they're not owning it, if there's no remorse. What are you working with? And then the question becomes if you're going along with that, why?
Mhm.
That's where the work needs to be.
And how do we, um, you know, the most difficult part is, at least from my perspective, I see the communication part, because sometimes communicating or mm, just navigating or expressing it becomes really very difficult.
Mhm.
Maybe the person who has betrayed us to a partner, or maybe our colleague, or maybe manager. So how exactly do you see the communication part playing there?
Yeah. Communication is so important. It's never an excuse to betray, however. It's really, I look at betrayal as the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule. So,
Mm.
was there a spoken or unspoken rule right there? It could have been a misinterpretation, but then if that's the case, it's really up to both people to get on the same page. But it's really an opportunity right then. if you're the one feeling betrayed, to without shame or blame, bring that to the person's attention. Let's say it's a colleague, and share from your perspective. And now it's an opportunity to have a very different kind of dialogue. But again, if that person's just going to be argumentative and defensive and not take any responsibility, you have very little to work with in a scenario like that.
Yeah, of course, of course. Wow. Okay, so this definitely hits home, and let's talk about the body. You mentioned about the numbers initially. So how does unhealed betrayal manifest physically, Dr. Debbie, and what should we paying attention to?
Yeah. Here's an example I'll show you in a story. We had a woman in our community in her mid 80s, and she had a 70+ year digestive issue from a family betrayal. She was adopted. They didn't tell her, like something like that. And 2 weeks in our program, she healed from a 70+ year digestive issue. That's what happens when you deal with the root cause and don't try to outrun it or numb it or suppress it. So we see that all the time. When you move out of stage 3 into stage 4, those symptoms heal. I mean, we see it all the time. People even they say like how the difference in how they look physically. They come in stage 2 or 3 looking 10 years older, and by the time they're in stage 4 and stage 5, they've regained that youthful glow because the immune system was suppressed. They had accelerated aging going on. I mean, so many things happen when the stress response is ignited. Your hormones are off. People think they're going into perimenopause or menopause, and meanwhile, that's often reversed when when the stress response is settled down a little bit. We see, like I mentioned, the digestive issues. Immune system is so much stronger. Uh, all of it.
Mm.
Besides just your general energy, when you're just exhausted and depleted, your body thinks it's running for its life, you know.
Yep.
But when that immune system, I'm sorry, when the stress response is back in check, when the nervous system is regulated again, the body can function normally. So when you think about, in a work context, if your body is acting as if, you're in intense danger, how can you possibly perform your best? You can't. You don't have access to that part of your mind.
It really hits home, and the most dangerous part is it's kind of the silent signals.
Mhm.
I mean, they are so suppressing that as you mentioned about the example,
Mhm.
60 years carrying that um, pain or uh, that feeling suppressed, and the body symptoms, body exhibiting those suppressed symptoms. So that's really, really, important to address.
Yeah.
So can transform it.
You absolutely can, and it's interesting. I just spoke with a group of human resource professionals, and I was telling them how their employees aren't coming to them about it. They're terrified they're going to lose their job. They're coming to us, the PBT Institute, because and we hear it. I can't function. I'm going to lose my job. I can't think straight. I'm making so many mistakes. I can't perform the usual way. This is what happens when you're in stages 2 and stage 3. It's so common.
Great, great. So, Dr. Debbie, um, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
sometimes, it's a kind of a contradictory perspective. So sometimes, people will say, or skeptics will say, we need to suppress or compartmentalize pain to keep things moving, especially in our business. We can't get stuck into that. So isn't healing a luxury not everyone can afford in the moment?
Not at all. I don't agree with that at all. No, you know what, when we say we have to compartmentalize something so that we can get our work done, the way it works best for healing and for your body is you need to find a time where you can not dwell in it, certainly move through it. It needs your attention so that so that it can be healed. But if you're just trying to outrun it, it will follow you around like a shadow. It doesn't work. Time won't heal it. A new relationship won't heal it. The only thing that heals it is being deliberate and intentional about healing the betrayal. And the first discovery, which I didn't mention, was betrayal is a different type of trauma that needs a different way to heal. So when people go about it trying to heal it as if it's something else, that's why they land and stay in stage 3.
Mhm. Great. So, Dr. Debbie, before we wrap up, if our listeners would like to connect with you and explore more about the wisdom you're sharing, the resources as well, how they can do that.
Thank you. Everything can be found at the PBT, as in Post Betrayal Transformation, thepbtinstitute.com.
Lovely. I'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes. And Dr. Debbie, thank you. Thank you so much. I think this was so much more than a conversation. I think it was a mirror for all the ways we hold on to pain, thinking we have let it go.
Mm.
So we really, I think more and more word has to be spread about addressing and acknowledging that pain we are storing just because it feels. So thank you so much for taking this initiative for all of us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And to all my listeners, if you have been operating at half capacity emotionally, physically, or in your relationships, in your business, maybe the answer isn't another strategy or goal. Maybe it's healing. And you can learn more about Dr. Debbie's work at the PBT Institute, and I highly recommend her podcast, From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I have already queued up 3 episodes to binge, so I'm definitely going to hop on to listen to her shows, and I'll have all the links mentioned in the show notes for you. And as always, thank you for tuning into BizBlend. Thank you for blending business and soul with me. Share this episode with someone who's been carrying something heavy. Until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.